Hi, welcome to Gloria Deo Academy, raising lifelong worshipers, lifelong learners, and lifelong servants. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about grades and how parents or co teachers can really make the most of our student grades as feedback from the classroom teachers. Now, when it comes to our students' grades, it really is like a conversation between teachers in our collaborative education model. And that goes all the way up from pre-K, all as we get feedback and notes, all the way up to our high school level. Because even then, we're going to school 4 days a week, and we're still having conversations. We're dialoguing with our upper grade students on about what they're learning, checking in to see how they're doing. But it is a conversation between the classroom teachers and the co-teachers, who are the parents back at home, doing home day work with them on home days, or even just checking in those upper grades. Now, the main thing when it comes to grades is that we want to make the most of this classroom teacher feedback without putting grades on a pedestal or turning grades into an idol, even on our home days. So we can take this feedback that we get and use it wisely. And I'm not just talking about the report cards that come every 9 weeks, but as we get the graded work back, completed work, or and little notes that the teachers make. I always tell my students that if our teachers are going to take the time to put notes and comment and suggest improvements, we're going to be sure that we're taking the time on home days to go over those. So it's all of those little things when our classroom teachers make notes or comments and add things to their grades. Every day we start our home days by going through our red binders. And so I would really suggest take that graded work out, acknowledge it, go through it together, praise good effort, always praise effort everywhere that you can. The first way we can use feedback wisely is just the obvious, the most direct, which is learning from our mistake. We may not need to take a pencil in hand and correct every mistake on an assignment, but at least pointing that out, having a quick conversation about it, acknowledging it is still meaningful as well. The second way that we can make feedback useful and use it wisely is it starts to kind of set the foundation for a good working collaboration between work, putting the effort in, doing the work, and getting feedback back on where I'm at in my learning. And this also leads to maybe a self-governing student who can take the initiative and really take more ownership over some of their learning as they learn to self-govern and get that feedback, adjust what they need to in different subjects. And like I mentioned, take more ownership over their learning and their schoolwork on home days. So learning from our mistakes and then also setting a student up for developing the self-government with their learning are two of the first ways mentioned that we can take student grades and use that feedback wisely. The third one I want to mention is that it really is a gauge to know where you're at in a specific subject for the co-teacher, and then use it to help modify or customize your home days for what your student needs. And this can go both directions. If a student is, just making 100s and everything, the work is easy, it is not quite challenging enough in any particular subject area, you can always do expansions, go above and beyond, and add some more challenging activities or real world application for them. If they are struggling, if you're getting feedback on the weekly grades, hey, their grade is really slipping. These spelling tests are getting harder and harder, or Latin or math, whatever it may be, then you can make that mental note or write it on a post-it. Hey, we need to spend 10 minutes in the evening doing this outside of our home day time. Just adding in that little bit of extra, or 10 minutes in the morning at breakfast while they're eating breakfast, we need to go do a little bit extra or have some supplemental work. Maybe have an email conversation with the teacher to say, can you please provide some additional resources so I can help my student on our home days outside of the 2 days in school, and really just help improve and grow them in that area where they need to. So I would say that if we as parents are using our students' grades as feedback wisely, we may have a surprise every now and then, a surprise grade that's sent home, but it's not going to be very often. I know, and as we get to know your kids, if you have multiple students in at different grade levels, you really get to learn your kids as well and learn their strengths and weaknesses. So after a few years of doing the collaborative model, you're not too often going to be surprised as long as you are taking those grades and that feedback and using them as a gauge to help modify and customize your home days to your kids, which is one of the great things about it. Now, grades can also go the other direction. We can take this feedback on our students' grades and we can not use them wisely, and instead we can allow them to become an idol in our lives. And I think this is important to mention because our mindsets as the parents, as we are, we're the students in this process as well. We're just students who happen to be further along in the learning process if we're all going to be lifelong learners. And so we kind of set some of the tone and some of the home atmosphere and expectations on these things. So if grades become an idol, I call it the dance monkey syndrome. And you might see this in lower grades with recitation, or maybe it probably maybe comes up in upper grades too. But I always think about that dance monkey dance, and I call it that, and it sounds so silly, but it's when maybe our hearts are more focused on impressing others or what others think about our kids rather than doing the learning for the love of learning and for honoring God and for doing the workload, doing the schoolwork for Him. And reminds me of in Scripture, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 7 says, "Work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." And so, if you happen to fall into a trap sometimes of that dance monkey syndrome, it's probably because we're thinking about people and trying to do it for people rather than for the Lord and to glorify Him. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The other thing, if grades turn into an idol, it can kind of lead to this feeling of the co-teacher who's at home needing to be an enforcer on home days because everything becomes about making a good grade or getting those hundreds. And there are times when kids do need an enforcer. We need to set boundaries and expectations for respect. However, if we are only ever enforcers on our home days, it's really hard to demonstrate fruits of the Spirit. So things like peace and joy and patience and gentleness. And that is probably more important, right, than the grades that we're aiming for. And so that's another way that if we find ourselves becoming only enforcers on home days, to maybe check and see how are we using student grades? Is that motivator? Am I motivated in a good way by grades, or am I overly motivated because I'm treating grades as an idol or putting it on a pedestal? And then the last thing to mention, if we are not using student grades wisely, students do eventually pick up on this. If we're only caring about the grade, they will learn to work the system. So by that, they're going to create their own system of just regurgitating information without actually learning anything. And when that happens, they're bypassing all of the truth, goodness, and beauty in this curriculum, in this classical education. Grades do have a place in our students' lives, and they can be a wonderful thing for us to use and to use wisely. We do want to make sure that we are not putting those on a pedestal. And really overall, in conclusion, just keeping in mind that is the end goal of our students' education the grade, or is it really learning about the Lord and all that He has done and created and the world that He's made? That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this reflection and contemplation about grades and student feedback. In the meantime, keep on pursuing truth, goodness, and beauty. Have a wonderful week.